Hey everyone. Over the past two videos, we've learned how to play the E minor chord, thus completing our key of C chord collection. And we learned how to read the C major scale using traditional notation. Let's review both things, starting with the chords. Play each one with 4 quarter note strums. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and. Now let's switch this up to our C major scale with tabs and standard notation and play that with a half note pulse per note. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, in addition to that, we've also been labeling chords, labeling the notes in a scale, finding resolution. We've mined the key of C for just about everything except for gold. And if you find that, remember I get a percentage. But now it's time for us to start stretching out beyond the key of C and to find out what else is out there. We need to explore new musical worlds, and new worlds mean new chords. We may head into some complicated territory here, but I have faith that we've built up enough tools for you to handle it. Just remember, there are 2 main objectives to take away from this lesson: how to play our new chord and reading the chart that goes with it. If you can do those 2 things, then you are doing fine. So, let's press forward. First, for our new chord, I present to you E7. Couple things you might notice. It has an unusual name, it has an unusual shape, and frankly, it has an unusual sound. So we've got to demystify some things, starting with how it's played. Starting with our first finger, it goes on the 1st fret of the G string. Then our middle finger goes on the 2nd fret of the C string. E remains open, and the ring finger goes on the 2nd fret of the A string. Pinky finger, as with the rest of our chords thus far, doesn't do anything. And here we have an E7 chord. This may be an awkward chord shape to make at first, but just like the others, it gets easier with a little practice. And in fact, this chord is pretty natural to play once you get used to it. Let's try it together for 8 strums. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and. Very nice. With some practice, we can clear the hurdle of the chord shape being unusual. Now for the other issues, starting with the name. This is not information you really need to know yet or have the tools to understand. So I'm going to give a brief rundown, and this is strictly just in case you're curious. We'll get back to it at a later time. Feel free to get a glass of water or check your phone while I do this. As we've discussed before, there are 2 main types of chords, major and minor, and which type of chord they are is determined by the notes within them, one of which we know already, the root. I've also told you that most chords have 3 different notes, though sometimes there can be more. E7 is one of those cases. It's kind of like a major chord, but the 7 indicates a specific 4th note. To really understand this, we need to know a little bit more about different keys and the other notes within a chord, and we'll get there soon enough, but not in this video. So right now, all you need to focus on is how to play it. But I also wanted to assure you that I'm not just making this up as I go along. Okay, time to stop checking your phone. We're back. And we're ready for that last unusual hurdle, that this chord sounds a little weird. Well, remember, music is all about how notes and chords work with other notes and chords. So we just need to find some good chords for E7 to work with. And luckily, I have one. We're going to take A minor, one of the first chords we learned, and pair it with E7. Then to return to the land of things we already know, we'll go back to A minor. So this is our new progression. A minor, E7, A minor. Let's try this with 4 quarter note strums per chord, remembering that the main thing you need to focus on is getting to that E7 shape. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very nice work, but let's see if we can refine this a little. We'll keep the quarter note strums, but this time only do 3 per chord. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good so far. And I have one final thing for you to try here. We're going to keep the beat, but change the 3 quarter notes we have for each chord into 1 dotted half note, which you'll remember gets 3 beats. And to let the notes really ring out, I'm going to be doing a gentle downward strum with my thumb. I want the ukulele to sound almost like a harp. So with that kind of strum, our progression will sound like this. And this beat is kind of nice because it feels like we get extra time to move our hands into their new positions. Try it with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Very nice work, everyone. And hopefully you're hearing now, when paired with A minor, E7 actually sounds pretty cool. But what else can we do with E7? Well, I have an interesting idea. Let's look at our pop chord progression, key of C. We know that the pop chord progression is 1, 5, 6, 4, and in C, that's C, G, A minor, F. Let's try playing this with the same beat that we played our new progression with. So 1 strum per chord and hold each strum for 3 beats. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. But now let's try this. Let's take away the 4 chord and replace it with E7. And let's see what that sounds like. Same beat. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that doesn't sound half bad, if not a little unusual at the end. So here's the last thing we're going to do to tie everything together. We're going to combine the A minor, E7, A minor progression with the altered pop chord progression and see if we can't make a song out of it. It'll go like this. We'll do A minor, E7, A minor, then repeat it, then try the altered pop chord progression, and then do A minor, E7, A minor again. In between each of these progressions, we'll rest for 3 beats. Let's give it a try, same dotted half note strums as before. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Rest. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Rest. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Rest. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now it sounds like we almost have the background music for an actual song. And the good news is, we do. You might not be familiar with the name of this song, but I'm betting you've heard this before. The name of the song is Für Elise, by one of the greatest composers of all time, Ludwig van Beethoven. The world of Western classical music is usually divided into different sections of time, called periods. And the 3 periods people are most familiar with are the Baroque period, the Classical period, and the Romantic period. The Baroque period we're already familiar with. That featured Pachelbel and Bach, among others. But moving forward into the future, we come to the Classical period of classical music, and we meet the three main composers of that era: Joseph Haydn, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and coming near the end of this time period, Beethoven. You may have noticed that these time periods sort of overlap, and that makes sense. It's impossible to put a firm date on that sort of thing. It's also worth pointing out that there were many composers and musicians from any given time period. But just like today, some get famous and remembered, and some don't. Remember, Pachelbel's canon took about 300 years to pick up any steam. But Beethoven was somewhat unique in that he straddled two time periods. His music defined the ending of the classical period and also kicked off and led the way into the Romantic period. What was even the difference? Well, simply put, classical period music was an evolution of Baroque, with a cleaner, back-to-basics approach. Romantic period music started getting emotional, exaggerated, and grandiose, and Beethoven influenced both. Born 1770 in Bonn, Germany, Beethoven studied music from an early age, writing his first piano piece at 13. In 1792, at age 21, he moved to Vienna, which was the arts and cultural center of Europe at that time. There he was mentored by the much older Haydn, among others, and quickly established himself as a virtuosic pianist, performer, and soon composer, with the premiere of his first symphony in 1800. Throughout Beethoven's life, he wrote about 722 pieces of music over 45 years, including his 9 famous symphonies, 16 string quartets, 10 concertos for various instruments, and hundreds of other pieces spanning every genre. Unfortunately, in the early 1800s, and just after Beethoven had started to establish himself as a powerhouse composer with his first 3 symphonies, he faced a major difficulty for any professional musician. He started going deaf. This put an end to his performing career, but he continued to compose, and his best work was yet to come. In 1810, Beethoven wrote one of his best-known piano compositions, Bagatelle No. 25 in A minor, or as it is more commonly known as, Für Elise. A bagatelle is a short, unpretentious solo piece, and Beethoven likely wrote it as a gift for somebody. Though 2 main people have been identified as possible candidates for who Elise actually was, it's hard to say for sure, as neither of them, or anybody else, probably got a chance to hear him play it. And why, you might ask? Well, as renowned and famous as Beethoven was during his lifetime, not everything he wrote was intended to be published or performed. Pachelbel's canon was slightly different in that it was performed during Pachelbel's lifetime, and people lost interest. Beethoven had so many other things going on that nobody thought much about what he didn't show the public. Für Elise was written and then probably filed away for safekeeping, and there it would stay for 57 years. It wouldn't be published until 1867, 40 years after Beethoven's death in 1827. It was in that year a manuscript was discovered by a musicologist named Ludwig Noll and published in his book, New Beethoven Letters. Over time, Für Elise has achieved a familiarity and popularity that has seemingly transcended its classical genre, making its way into our ears via early piano lessons and cell phone ringtones alike. And now that we know all this, let's attach our new progressions to it. The version that we're going to play along with is a shorter version of the song. I encourage you to check out the entire piece, but we're going to be playing along with the most recognizable part of Für Elise. That being said, we've got to add a few changes to our part. Don't worry, we're not adding any new chords or sections, we're just repeating some things and doing some counting. This piece was originally written in the time signature 3/8. That's not super difficult to count, but we can simplify things by thinking of it in 3/4 instead, which is something we're more familiar with, and it doesn't change the beat. We've also got this going on, whole rests in measures where we thought we only had 3 beats. This is actually a common thing. Whole rests usually mean rest for 4 beats, but they can also mean rest the entire measure if they're just by themselves. So, in the first section, the A section, we rest for 3 beats, strum each chord for 3 beats, rest again, and strum again. Our B section is just about the same. Strum each chord for 3 beats, and then rest at the end. And to put this all together, check out the song form. A section twice, then B section, then A, B, and finish on A. Last thing to point out, strictly counting this song can be a little hard because of the pickup notes Beethoven uses at the beginning. The first two notes aren't actually in the measure. So here's a trick, but don't say I encouraged this. You don't really have to count. This phrase makes it so obvious when you play that all you really need to do is listen. So try doing that with me, and let's add some ook chords to Für Elise. Ready? Very good, everyone. So, now that we've learned something about Beethoven and learned something about one of his piano pieces, we're going to take this one step further, figuring out where E7 fits in with the rest of our chords. We know that the pop chord progression is not just C, G, A minor, F. It also has to be 1, 5, 6, 4. And Beethoven uses an altered version of this progression in his song. So does that mean Für Elise is in the key of C? Well, not exactly. To understand this, we're going to need to relabel some chords and meet the key of C's evil twin, the key of A minor. It's important to understand that we've labeled chords the way we have only because they're in the key of C. There's a few songs we haven't been able to do this for. If you recall the progressions for Shake It Off, Lips Are Movin', Hunger Strike, and Red Balloon, you may notice something. These songs don't resolve to C. C is in the song, but it's not the main chord. Take our first song. If you play the Shake It Off chords, try to end it all with C, it doesn't sound right. G is what makes the song sound done, and it's the same for the rest of these songs. So they're all in the key of G. And what does that mean for us? Well, for starters, we wouldn't label G as 5. It would change to 1. In the case of Für Elise, we're also going to need to reconsider how we label some chords and what their purpose is. So, like I said, we're going to look at C major's evil twin. If you think you've got a weird family, just consider the musical family of keys. Every major key has a dark side, an alternative universe where the rules change and nothing is as it seems. Okay, I'm just being dramatic. But really, every major key has a minor key counterpart, known as the relative minor. It's very easy to find the relative minor of any key. In fact, it's hiding in plain sight. All you need to do is look for the minor 6. In a minor key, that chord becomes the 1 chord, but it's still minor. So we don't label it with a capital I, it stays lowercase. Minor keys come with their own set of rules and peculiarities, and I don't want to bog you down with a lot of information. So we'll just learn a few rules that will help us better understand what in the world Beethoven was doing. Let's look at our chord chart and do some analysis. I can tell you right now, this piece is in A minor. In fact, it's in the title. So we label our A minor chords as 1. However, let's not do the B section yet. Hold off on that for a second. So we have our A minors labeled, but what about the E7? Well, I have another musical rule for you. In a minor key, a 7 chord is allowed if it's a 5 chord. So is E7 a 5 chord? Well, let's count from A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. E is, in fact, a 5 chord. So E7 would be a 5-7 chord. So it's allowed. And no surprise, going from minor 1 to 5-7 to minor 1 again sounds pretty cool. But what about this B section? Ooh, Beethoven is tricky. He pulls a musical stunt on us. From the A section, we have a sleight of hand and magically change from A minor to C major. Don't forget, he can do that because these keys are related. So in the B section, everything goes back to the way we're used to. C equals 1, G equals 5, A minor equals 6, but then E7 here is a little out of place, like it's outside of the key. Really though, it's our portal back to the world of A minor, and to A minor we return. Cool, huh? This is kind of complicated for now, so I don't expect you to understand every last word of this, but if you rewatch this video and start to understand what's going on, then you are, as Obi-Wan Kenobi once said, taking a step into a larger world. So let's review our musical rules really quick. We already knew that in a major key, the 1, 4, and 5 chords were always major, and we also knew that the 2, 3, and 6 chords were always minor. But now we know that in a minor key, the 1 is lowercase and a 7 chord is allowed if it's a 5-7 chord. And because A minor and C major are relatives, Beethoven figured out how to use them both in one song. Lots of heavy lifting this video. Like I said, focus on the new chord and playing the song first, and see if you can understand the rest at your own pace. Alright everyone, we've got one more video to go for workbook number 1. And in our next video, we'll take a look at what happens when a chord doesn't quite fit within a key. And we're going to be finishing up using every chord we've learned so far between 2 different artists. One is a legend from England, and the other is a legend from Hawaii. Alright, until then, thanks everyone.